The night was cold, the kind that bit through denim and drifted under old doors no matter how tight they were shut. The prairie wind whistled through the mesquite trees, carrying dust and silence across the wide, open Texas land. Inside the small wooden ranch house, the only light came from a dim lantern flickering on the kitchen table. Eli Turner, a broad-shouldered rancher in his late 40s, sat by that table, mending a torn saddle strap. His hands were rough and scarred, his eyes quiet and deep like a man who'd lived through more than he ever said. His life was simple: wake before dawn, ride the range, tend to the cattle, eat alone, sleep alone. He hadn't had a family in 15 years, not since his wife passed in childbirth. Since then, the ranch was his world, his work, his prayer. That night, he heard something strange, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. It was faint, almost lost in the whistle of the cold air, a soft cry, a child's cry. Eli froze, listening. The cry came again, weak, trembling, from outside the porch. He grabbed his lantern and stepped toward the door. The old boards creaked under his boots as he opened it, letting the chill rush in. There, on his porch, huddled beneath a worn blanket, was a woman, young, maybe in her early 30s, her hair tangled, her clothes soaked with dust and dew. Beside her, 2 children, one maybe 6, the other barely 4, slept pressed against her sides. Eli just stood there for a moment, staring. He could see the exhaustion carved into her face, the way her hands still held the children close even in sleep, her fingers trembling. "Ma'am?" he said softly. She didn't move. He crouched down, careful not to startle them. The boy stirred and looked up, his eyes wide and afraid. Eli set the lantern down beside them. "It's all right, son," he said in a low, calm voice. "You're safe here." The woman opened her eyes slowly, blinking into the light. When she saw him, she gasped and tried to sit up, clutching her. "Kids, closer." "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "We didn't mean to. I didn't know where else to go." Eli shook his head. "You don't need to be sorry. You're on my porch, that's all." The woman looked like she might cry. She was too tired even for fear. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara," she said quietly. "Clara Bennett. This is Noah, and this is little Grace." Eli nodded. "Well, Clara Bennett, it's freezing out here. You and those little ones are coming inside." She hesitated, glancing toward the door, like she didn't trust that kindness could be real. "We won't stay long," she said quickly. "We'll go at sunrise, I promise." Eli looked down at the children. Grace was sleeping again, her small hand clutching her mother's sleeve. Noah's lips were pale. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "if you stay out here till sunrise, there won't be a sunrise for you to walk into. Now come on." He helped her up, gently, as if afraid she might fall apart. Inside, he led them to the fire and poured warm water from the kettle into 3 tin cups. The children drank like they hadn't had anything warm in days. Clara sat silently, staring into the flames. Eli could see her hands trembling. "You running from something?" he asked quietly. She nodded, tears spilling before she could stop them. "My husband, he passed last winter. Left me with the ranch, the debts, the kids. They came for the land, took everything. I've been trying to find work, any work, but—" She broke off, her voice cracking. "We've been walking for days." Eli didn't say a word. He just listened, and in her shaking voice he heard a pain he knew too well. He stood up suddenly. "There's a spare room in the back," he said. "Ain't much, but it's warm. You can take it for tonight." Clara shook her head. "No, please. We'll sleep here by the fire. I don't want to trouble you." Eli crossed his arms. "You're already here. Trouble's done come. Might as well get you comfortable." She smiled weakly, grateful but too tired to argue. Eli led her and the kids to the small room at the end of the hall. It was old, dusty, but it had a bed and quilts. He lit a small lamp and stepped aside as they entered. When the kids lay down, Clara stood at the doorway. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to." Eli tipped his hat. "You're right. Didn't have to. But I reckon I wanted to." She gave him a soft look, the kind that spoke more than words could say, then closed the door gently. That night, Eli sat again by the fire, staring at the orange glow. The ranch was quiet, but for the first time in years the silence felt different, softer, warmer somehow. He didn't know what made him say it. Maybe the memory of his late wife, maybe the sound of those children's tiny snores through the wall. But he smiled and muttered to himself, "If they snore loud enough to be heard from here, I'll build 'em a room." He chuckled quietly and leaned back in his chair. The fire crackled. For the first time in 15 years, Eli Turner didn't feel alone. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, painting the kitchen gold. Eli was already up, frying eggs and biscuits. When Clara stepped out with the kids, she looked startled. You made breakfast?" she said. Eli shrugged. "Ain't every day I got guests. You'll eat." The kids laughed as he handed them each a plate, their faces lighting up at the smell. Clara watched them, tears filling her eyes again, but this time they weren't from pain. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. Eli looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "Ma'am, I don't do things I don't want to. You and those kids can stay a while. Got plenty of work here, and you look like you ain't afraid of it." Her lips trembled. "You'd let us stay? After just finding us on your porch?" Eli smiled faintly. "Ma'am, sometimes folks end up on your porch 'cause God's trying to remind you you've still got a heart beating in your chest." She didn't know what to say. She just nodded and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Turner." He looked toward the barn. "Eli," he said simply. "Just Eli." The day passed slow and steady, the way days do on a ranch. Clara helped with chores. Noah followed Eli around asking 100 questions about horses and fences, and little Grace chased butterflies near the porch. Eli hadn't heard laughter like that in years. That night, as the sun set red over the fields, Clara tucked the children into bed. Eli stood by the porch rail looking out at the horizon. She joined him quietly. "Thank you for letting us stay," she said. "I'll work for what we use. I can cook, sew, clean—" Eli cut her off with a shake of his head. "You don't owe me nothing, Clara. You're safe here. That's all that matters." For a long time they stood in silence, watching the stars come out. Then Clara said softly, "You said something last night about building a room." Eli smiled, glancing toward the small window glowing faintly behind them. "Yeah. I said if those kids snore loud enough, I'll build 'em one." She laughed quietly for the first time. "You mean it?" He nodded. "I got lumber in the shed and hands to use it. Maybe it's time this old house had a little life again." For the first time she smiled fully, and in that smile something changed between them. Not love, not yet, but the start of trust, the kind that heals the broken parts of a person. As the night deepened, Eli went inside and checked on the children. They were fast asleep, soft snores filling the little room. He grinned to himself. "Well," he whispered, "guess I'd better start measuring." He turned out the lamp, his heart lighter than it had been in years, and outside, under a wide Texas sky full of stars, the wind carried a promise that sometimes the kindest souls appear on your porch when you least expect them, and they change your life forever. The morning sun rose soft and golden over the Turner Ranch, washing the fields in light. The roosters crowed, the horses snorted in their stalls, and Eli Turner was already in the barn, sleeves rolled up, cutting planks of lumber. The sound of his hammer echoed across the quiet land. Clara stood by the doorway, holding a cup of coffee she'd made him. "You're really doing it," she said with a small smile. Eli didn't look up. "Told you I would. Those kids snore louder than thunder." She laughed, shaking her head. "You don't have to—" He stopped hammering and turned to her. "Clara, I ain't doing this because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. This house has been too quiet for too long. It's about time it had a reason to stay standing." Clara looked down, her eyes misty. "You don't even know us." Eli took the cup from her hands, his voice calm but steady. "Sometimes you don't need to know someone to feel what they're carrying. I've been alone a long time. Maybe helping you helps me too." Days turned into weeks. The room began to take shape. Strong oak walls, a wide window overlooking the pasture, and a porch swing Eli built from leftover boards. Noah followed him everywhere, asking questions about tools, animals, and how to ride a horse. Little Grace spent her mornings feeding the hens and bringing wildflowers to Clara, who helped in the kitchen. The ranch, once filled only with wind and silence, now carried laughter, footsteps, and the sound of life again. But not everyone in town saw it that way. One afternoon, Eli drove into the nearby town of Red River to buy nails and glass panes. At the general store, two men by the counter started whispering loud enough for him to hear. "You seen Turner lately?" one said. "Took in some widow and her kids. Folks say she just showed up one night." "Crazy old fool," the other replied. "Can't save the world. She'll bleed him dry and leave when something better comes along." Eli said nothing. He paid for his supplies, lifted the sack over his shoulder, and walked out. But their words echoed in his mind all the way home. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Clara found him sitting by the half-finished room, his face quiet and unreadable. "You all right?" she asked softly. He nodded, then shook his head. "Went into town today. Folks got tongues sharp as barbed wire." Clara lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry, Eli. I never wanted to bring trouble." He looked up at her. "You didn't. Don't let gossip make you feel small. People talk when they see something good they don't understand." She smiled faintly. "You always this kind?" Eli gave a short laugh. "No, I just learned that kindness costs less than regret." That night, when the room was finally done, Eli stood at the doorway holding the last nail in his hand. The walls glowed in the lamplight. Solid, warm home. He called the kids in. "Well, what do you think?" Grace squealed, running to the little bed he'd built. "It's ours, Mama." Clara stepped inside, eyes wide with emotion. She touched the wooden frame, the smooth floorboards. "Eli, it's beautiful." He scratched the back of his neck, embarrassed. "Ain't much, but it's sturdy. You and the kids can have it as long as you need." Clara turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You didn't just build a room, Eli. You built us a place to breathe again." Eli looked away, his throat tightening. "Guess I'll call it the snore room," he said with a smile. They all laughed, and for the first time in years, Eli's heart felt full of life, laughter, and something he hadn't felt since his wife died, family. Weeks passed, and the ranch began to change. The crops grew stronger with more hands to help. The fences were mended, the house brighter. Neighbors who once gossiped began to see something different. A man reborn through kindness, a woman healed through trust, and two children growing up safe. One Sunday morning, Clara joined Eli on the porch. The kids were playing in the field, chasing a dog Eli had rescued. "Eli," she said softly, "I used to pray every night for a miracle. I thought maybe God stopped listening, but He didn't. He just sent us to your porch." Eli smiled, looking out at the fields. "Maybe He sent you here to remind me life ain't done yet." She looked at him, eyes full of quiet affection. "You saved us." He shook his head. "No, Clara, you all saved me." The wind blew gently through the grass. The ranch, once a place of solitude, now pulsed with laughter, light, and love. And every night, as the stars filled the sky, Eli would pause by the new room's door, listen to the soft rhythm of children's snores, and smile. Because true kindness doesn't build walls, it builds homes.